Hello, everybody. Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 podcast. Today it is the 31st of July, 2022, as I am recording this show. A lot to get to today. We have been doing conference previews, but today we're discussing the comments made by Pac-12 Commissioner George Kliavkoff on Friday at Pac-12 Media Days, because boy, did he have some fun things to say about the Pac-12 and our conference, the Big 12. I mentioned the Big 12 by name several times in his opening address and in several interviews afterwards. So we'll talk about what he said, the future of both conferences, and some concerns about whether or not these two conferences could actually work together. I think that's pretty much in doubt. It was pretty much in doubt before as well. So fun show coming up with that. Let's get things going. Have to note this too. We're on Zoom recording this, having some issues with Restream, which we normally use. So the normal effects will not be there, but I'm making sure there's a line, we call it a line running in the business, for audio purposes, and video will be done through Zoom. So I hope you all don't see too much of a drop off, but you won't get the intro and outro. We're getting things solved. We're doing our best, but I'm using Zoom for the best quality. So there we go. Thanks for making Locked On Big 12 your first listen every single day. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at LOBig12. Find me at Josh Neighbors _. All right, let's get this thing going. So, obviously, it's been a really interesting time for the Big 12 and the Pac-12. The Pac-12 has been going through it a bit, and they finally had their media days. And so out of all of the major conferences, they were the last to go, right? The Big 12 was first, the SEC and ACC, both got their turn. The Big 10 went earlier this week. And then you got the Pac-12 at the end of the week. And George Kliavkoff on Friday really came out swinging. Now, there's a few ways, I think we just set all this stuff up. Everything we're seeing now is obviously set off by Texas and OU leaving the Big 12 for the SEC, right? That happens then, and there is some history between the Pac-12 and the Big 12, which we'll get to after this, because the Pac-12 does not add any Big 12 schools at that point. Well, then you have USC and UCLA getting poached by the Big 10, right? So that's happening now. They're going to leave next year. And there has been a lot of talk about, hey, will the Pac-12 get poached by the Big 12 or any other leagues or remaining teams, right? At Big 12 Media Days, incoming Commissioner Brett Yormark, who will actually be taking over when a lot of you see this on August 1st. It's his last off day, so, he hasn't really been off, but, hope you enjoy it, Brett. That's the first thing he has to deal with was the comments from George Kliavkoff. But, he takes over on August 1st, and he said at Big 12 Media Days, the Big 12 is open for business. He did not once mention a conference, did not once talk about taking Pac-12 schools. It was not something he had mentioned. Now, I think the implication was there. It's something that we've talked about a lot here. There is vulnerability there as well. The Pac-12 is dealing with kind of some fire on three fronts right now. Obviously, the Big 10 already took USC and UCLA. They need to be worried now about maybe different conferences, the Big 12, ACC, the Big 10, taking more of their schools and functionally, getting the conference, kind of giving it that's the capiche. That's it. That's how it is. Right. So there's the multiple fronts, the different conferences. There is the media narrative. There's a lot of media narratives out there right now, but there is stuff in the media about the amount of money the Pac-12 is getting offered. George Kliavkoff mentioned that they will be closing the revenue gap with their next deal. I find that very, very difficult to believe, but that is what George Kliavkoff said. So they're fighting a public relations battle as well at this point in time. And they need to add, if they want to solidify, they got to add more teams, right? So there are multiple fronts on which the Pac-12 is currently fighting, right? They've lost teams. They might lose more teams. They need to gain teams. And the information we're getting right now is not positive. Put that all together and you understand why George Kliavkoff would be on the defensive. Now, I think for a lot of Pac-12 fans, they're totally fine with him being out there, taking the hacks, right? Pete Alonso, for you, those of you who are Mets fans, or whoever, the Hank Aaron, I guess, to get more general baseball, Barry Bonds, whatever you want. He's taking big swings. He's trying to hit, he was at the podium. He had to do something. I think it would be worse off if we saw him there and he was just kind of so, not really generating too much excitement, not really getting people fired up at all, kind of on the warpath. He needs to be like that. Mentioning the Big 12 by name in the way he did, I get it. There's like actually no consequences to doing it. I don't believe, other than the fact that he could be wrong about a lot of the stuff that he said in the end of the day. So that's kind of the angle I want to take on this. Is like, let's actually look at what George Kliavkoff said and kind of dissect it, because I think there was a lot of really interesting comments. And I want to begin with this. With respect to the Big 12 being open for business, I appreciate that. We haven't decided if we're going shopping there yet or not, end quote. Okay. So, I do appreciate his candor, his honesty. Rarely do you have somebody speak about student athletes in this way about, hey, we're going shopping. Like the Big 12 is a strip mall and you can just take Oklahoma State and you can just take these schools. We haven't decided yet if we're going shopping there. They looked like fools last year because, and it's coming out now, USC's president basically shot down the idea of expansion, and that could have included some Big 12 schools potentially, and they didn't do it, and then USC and UCLA bolted, which looks really bad. And then now, hey, we haven't decided if we're going shopping there yet. What Big 12 school is looking to join the Pac-12? I mean, after the way they treated the Big 12 last year, saying, we don't want your schools, we have no need for your schools. I mean, after that, and kind of some of the, once again, also there's the political stuff that we've mentioned in the show too, like, you really don't wonder, hey, okay, what Big 12 schools are jumping in line to join the Pac-12? Did Baylor or Oklahoma State see USC and UCLA leaving and say, you know what I got to be a part of that? No, none of them did. And by the reporting that we have as well, when it came down to talking about a merger, the Big 12 was the one that backed out. And the excuse we got from the Pac-12 was, well, the television deals expire at different times. Then if that's such a big issue, why are we talking about it at all in the first place? That makes absolutely no sense. Why were there talks about a merger? And then you say the problem was our TV deals expire different times. Then it wouldn't have worked anyway, right? If that's the nail in the coffin, it just wouldn't have worked. So that makes no sense. So that's out there. And so you're saying we haven't decided if we're going shopping there yet. No, you're going shopping in the Mountain West. That's where you're going. I mean, who in the hell wants to join the Pac-12 right now? Now, some people say, there's been a lot of television stuff out there, and we have to clear this up right now. The schools, and there's been a lot of research out there, and people are saying, trying to compare time slots and these school and these time slots and all this kind of stuff. The Pac-12's viewership for the remaining schools is very good for Washington. It's very good for Oregon. Two very good brands that we have discussed ad nauseum on this show. All right. I think it's a coup if the Big 12 gets them. Some of you all disagree, but I think because Nike is Oregon, Oregon is Nike's school, their college football school, their college sports school, and Washington is in Seattle, and it's still a strong brand. I think that would be huge for the Big 12. Politics and whatever else be damned. I think that's a good move. Once again, whatever you all think out there, Oregon and Washington 100% add value to the Big 12. There is no doubt about the financials that would add value to the conference. Whether it works, the scheme's good, fine, totally whatever. I get that. But that would add value to the conference. But if you're trying to tell me about Washington State's viewership, or you're trying to tell about Oregon State's viewership, Stanford's still a good brand, but Cal football's viewership, these schools benefit from the late night window when there's nothing else on. That is why you see high viewership for Washington State. They might have better viewership than some other schools. Why? Because they're in a time slot where they're on ESPN and there's nothing else on. And what do people have their televisions on Saturdays? College football. It's going to be on ESPN. You probably don't peel it off ESPN all day. You might bounce around, you're trying to find whatever game's on. I watch Pac-12 After Dark too, but there are no alternatives. Acting like people are choosing Pac-12 games at night as opposed to something else is disingenuous. Does the Pac-12 offering late time slots benefit the Pac-12 a lot? Yes, it does. It's great viewership. It's nice to have that. But you can't act like that, like it's the brands that are bringing that. And I've argued this, and I think it's true. Like, there could be Big 12 After Dark games. If you were to absorb some Pac-12 schools, you could still have 1 to 2 games a week in one game a week in a late time slot to satisfy that and still get that viewership and still get those ratings. All right. I think that's 110% in play. So I just one of those on the TV thing. Going back to the actual expansion, the Big 12 was going to be fine, at least in the immediate, before the USC and UCLA move. They're fine standing pat. And if they don't, I think it's a miss if they don't add teams, but like, they'll be okay, at least in the short term, if they don't add teams. They're going to have 12 teams. The Pac-12 will have 10, and, they'll try to add somebody else. So we'll see if Oregon and Washington want to play ball and want to remain in the FBS, or not in FBS. Stanford and Cal kind of have to answer that question. I actually thought Bud Elliott made a really good point the other day. Like, will Cal and Stanford be playing FBS football here in the, foreseeable future? Next 10, 15 years, we'll see about that. Like, those schools have some choices to make. And I talked about Stanford and Cal's choices as well in an earlier episode that fired up a lot of you all. So this idea, once again, the shopping thing, nobody in the Big 12 is sitting there waiting for an agreement, waiting for that. And also, I'd be careful here too. Another thing for them is the revenue sharing aspect. Revenue sharing really did hurt the Big East. It's a difficult model to get down, revenue sharing, where it's tiered, where you have more schools making more money based off either brand or success. It's really difficult to pull off. So I think once again, this shopping comment is totally out of line when presented with those facts, right? We haven't decided that we're going shopping there yet. I'm reading the article right now from Stuart Mandel and Max Olson. Shots fired. Sure, that is shots fired. 110%. That is shots fired. But like, this is kind of where we're at this point in time. But once again, don't bring that in here, acting like, you all are waiting to decide if the big, you want to go after the Big 12 yet. Like, the remaining Big 12 is kind of remaining Big 12. Unless the Big 10 or the SEC asks for one of these schools to leave, or the ACC, maybe, if their deal ever gets any better, they're not going to you. All right, so here's another one. That remark was a reflection of the fact that I've been spending 4 weeks trying to defend against grenades that have been lobbed from every corner of the Big 12, trying to destabilize our remaining conference. I understand why they're doing it when you look at the relative media value between our two conferences. I get why they're scared. No, because they weren't coming after you. So this makes no sense. Just I get why they're scared. Okay. The Big 12 is scared of the Big 10 and the SEC, right? That gap could really widen, and maybe the ACC by some extent as well, because that television deal does protect them in some senses because of how long it is. But the idea that the Big 12 is now scared, especially after losing USC and UCLA, makes absolutely no sense. Why would they be afraid? If they were afraid previous to that, they would have been making overtures to you to get your teams before this even happened. Maybe they were making overtures before, but they kind of got their teams in the four, and they kind of sat there and said, okay, here we go. Once you all got pillaged, that's when they went after you. Also, why is there so much ire directed at the Big 12? I know picking a fight with the Big 10 might not be the best thing to do because they're one of the big dogs and you don't have any chance of winning this. But like, the Big 10 is the one that you all agreed to be in a voting block for on college football playoff expansion. The Big 10 was the one that agreed into the scheduling alliance with you all and was, you guys were all together and left the Big 12 out of it. Okay. Why aren't you mad at the Big 10? Why aren't you mad at Kevin Warren? You talked about that gentleman's agreement that happened, and that guy went into your pocket and took your stuff. And now you're trying to lay waste to the Big 12 for some reason. They're the ones who did it. It was not the Big 12. The Big 12 was just following suit from what the Big 10 just did and also what the SEC did to our conference. That's what they're doing. So to act like the Big 12 now is the big bad. No, the Big 12 added teams because they had to. The Big 12 is now going after teams because the Big 10 set this in motion. So acting like you're dodging grenades, no, 2 grenades landed and they were from the Big 10 and they landed 2 in your camp. They took 2 of your teams. For you to act like it was, the Big 12 is throwing stuff your way. Yeah, they are now, after you all took a break and after you lost 2 teams to a conference that you had a gentleman's agreement with. You're the ones who look bad here. It's your fault, George Kliavkoff. I think people have said a lot. George took over a really tough situation. Larry Scott did not leave that conference in a good spot. I 110% agree with that. But for him to come out, he's the one who lost those 2 teams. All right. He is the one who did that. And it was with a conference that he was in a quote unquote, gentleman's agreement with. They made a big deal about the alliance in public. All right. They were the ones who did that. And they took your teams. It's ridiculous for you to then turn around and be like, the Big 12, they're the ones coming after us. I'm dodging stuff from the Big 12. He went on to say that none of the rumors are true. The data continues to show that staying together makes a lot of sense as we go through the media process, which is in the middle of right now. Their TV deal is up a year after ours. It doesn't make much sense. Based on what our consultants have told us, the 10 staying together is the best option and the only option because we can't control what happens in the Big 10. It would just be irresponsible from a fiduciary standpoint to just jump to the Big 12 for the sake of jumping. No, nobody is jumping to the Big 12 for the sake of jumping. That is another comment that is way off. You're jumping to the Big 12 for security. That's what you're doing. It's not for just going there for that sake. You see, look at the metrics, look at the numbers, and any way you cut it, slice it, dice the numbers, come to the conclusion that no Pac-12 school is going to the Big 12. All right, so here's what I'll say about this, is that he can say that as much publicly as he wants, but he has admitted, and Ross Dellinger reported this, that Big 12 presidents have been in contact with Pac-12 presidents and is being talked about and it is being discussed as it stands right now. So there is contact, which means somebody's mind could be changed. All right. That's kind of where things, where things stand with that. I'm trying to find any other quote I have. Let's see. I'm trying to find anything else from George Kliavkoff. Yeah. So not a whole lot else. And I noticed you made some comments elsewhere, but one Big 12 AD said Georgia's comments might galvanize the Big 12 even more. Yeah, why not? Why not? He also said the Big 12 asked whether we would be interested in merging, and we explained to them the financial reasons and the contractual reasons related to existing media deals that would make it impossible for us to merge with them. Then, it sounded like it was 3 Zoom meetings. So if it was 3, why don't you tell them no from the start, right? That's kind of one of the things that would make sense. Okay, so this is also from, I think, George Kliavkoff. I'm not disparaging the Big 12, we told The Athletic. I actually think it's in the best interest of college athletics if there's a healthy Big 12 as part of the Power 5, there's a healthy Pac-12 as part of the Power 5. I think it's the best outcome. If we can be healthy, they're healthy, we're healthy. Okay, so the gloves are off. Now, what I don't want to see is Brett Yormark come out and start talking a lot of trash. I don't need that. I don't think a lot of you all want that either. Maybe some of you do. I don't need my commissioners of my conferences acting like professional wrestlers, whatever. What I will say is this, is that, look, the Big 12 should attack. Kevin Warren, and I forgot to mention this, Kevin Warren mentioned Stanford and Cal and Oregon and Washington by name and said he was looking in, I think it was either him or Gene Smith, whoever it was, like people at Big 10 Media Day are mentioning these schools by name and discussing, that they're weighing the options and weighing the value of those schools to be added. They are by name mentioning your institutions. Okay. So for you to attack the Big 12 is ridiculous. I understand why you go on the offensive here, but you should look to expand as fast as possible or do whatever you can as fast as possible. What I'm saying here is the Pac-12 is running out of options. They really are. And these comments from George Kliavkoff reflected that reality. The Pac-12 is on the back foot. This is not the start of some public war. this is just an indication of where things are currently. The Big Ten is interested in those schools. People in the ACC might be interested in Pac-12 schools. The Big 12 is interested in Pac-12 schools. Okay. That's the reality. There are, once again, multiple fronts, multiple places where people are interested in their schools. So I hope this does not become more, I mean, for content, it's great. George Kliavkoff going out there and saying some stuff that really does not reflect the reality of the situation, but he has to do it anyway. I understand why, is great for us. I do not want Brett Yormark to follow suit. I don't want him naming names. I don't want him talking about George Kliavkoff. I don't want him naming institutions. I want him to work behind the scenes and do business. That's why we got him here into the Big 12. That's why I hope that, it works like that. I don't need public sparring, maybe a comment here, comment there, whatever. But if you're working behind the scenes, making things happen behind the scenes and trying to, facilitate things, that's what I'm in for. So George Kliavkoff comes out swinging, my God. But we'll see if anything comes of that. And we'll see as we move forward what the latest is on conference realignment. All right, quick word from our sponsors. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn. You guys go to LinkedIn today. You guys, when you guys go to LinkedIn, you guys can post your job, and over 40 million job seekers go to LinkedIn every single week. So it's going to be seen by a whole host of people. So go to linkedin.com today when you guys do. Once again, linkedin.com. You guys, I know actually the promo code for my last one. There's Locked On College. So linkedin.com/Locked On College. Also linkedin.com/MLB. And you guys can do it as well. So, Locked On MLB. So you guys can do that as well at LinkedIn. Also, today's show is brought to you by BetOnline and betonline.net. When you guys go to BetOnline today, you guys can sign up. It's free to do. It's easy to do. Once again, BetOnline and betonline.net. They've got NASCAR odds. They have got F1 odds. They have got soccer odds. They got MLB odds. Then for the upcoming seasons that have not started yet, they have got futures. They have got for college football and pro football. So find those there at BetOnline and betonline.net. BetOnline, it is where the game starts. All right, folks, thank you for watching today's show. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at LO Big 12. You guys can follow me at Josh Neighbors _. You guys can find the show wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube as well. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. We're trying to get those subscribers up to 1,500 here. And let's see if we can get around 2K before the season starts. All right. And we'll try to get this resolved, the old Zoom background, the Zoom deal that we have to do right now. We'll try to get ourselves back on track with Restream. Hopefully that gets fixed here. All right, my friends, till next time, as always, stay safe.